Hi, and welcome to the Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with writer-producer Carol Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding, and host of this show. Carol is the president of From the Heart Productions, a nonprofit organization that has supported filmmakers with the Roy W. Dean Grant, fiscal sponsorship, education, and resources for over 30 years. Carol also teaches the Learn Producing class. Each class features an industry expert guest instructor and is designed to give the information, guidance, and support to become a successful producer. You can learn more about this class and all of From the Heart Productions offerings at FromTheHeartProductions.com. Today we are joined by our guest host, filmmaker Heather Lenz, best known for directing and producing the Sundance documentary Kusama Infinity. Our special guest is Julie Rubio. Julie is an award-winning film producer, writer, director, and actor. As president of Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area and founder of East Meets West Productions, she produced the acclaimed East Side Sushi, which has enjoyed both domestic and international distribution via the Samuel Goldwyn Mayer Company, Sony Home Pictures, HBO North America, and Netflix. Rubio is the writer, director, and producer of the comedy Too Perfect, which found its audience domestically on Amazon Prime and through Osiris Entertainment. She was also the writer, director, and producer for Six Sex Scenes and a Murder, available on Netflix and Apple TV. Other cinematic ventures Rubio has helmed include Soledad is Gone Forever for Haiku Films, Oakland Be Mine, the comedic Del Cilio, Everything is Temporary, and Impression. Her films have graced numerous domestic and international festivals. Rubio's latest work, The True Story of Tamara de Lempicka and the Art of Survival, marks her debut as a feature documentary writer, director, and producer. For years, the enigmatic allure of Tamara de Lempicka's paintings and life story have captivated Rubio, and we are thrilled to discuss the film with her today.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for the lovely introduction. And thank you, Julie, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. For our listeners who haven't seen your newest film yet, can you please tell us what it's about in your own words?
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Heather, so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. For your listeners that have little knowledge about Tamara de Lempicka, I think it's going to change soon because she's really having her moment right now in the United States. She's really quite popular in Europe, and I think it's really her moment right now. So, the true story of Tamara de Lempicka and the art of survival. I think it's such a visually stunning and sweeping feature documentary, and it traces the life and the survival of the renowned painter. You know, she's really a powerful artist from her rise to international stardom in 1920s Paris to her move to the United States in 1940, fleeing fascism, and then her revival in the current art market. And she was really, she's kind of known as the queen of Art Deco painters. And there's the centennial of the Art Deco now, so it's really, like I said, her moment. She does these high gloss, sensual nudes and portraits of high society during the Jazz Age, and she was, marginalized like so many female artists, and then she gained notoriety for her romantic liaisons and her models and her indulgent, decadent lifestyle. But she was really so much more. It's a empowering story, a multi-talented, really brilliant artist, and she captured what I believe she hoped would be the new future, a new woman, a new man, a new society, and allowed us to really uh, her art spoke to the future. And through those paintings, you see that she was tormented by the events of the world, and she had to deal with ageism and sexism, and she still had though this will to be great and to be seen, in a world that didn't want to see women artists or Jewish people or LGBTQ people or anything that she was, anything that was other. But she still had that that courage, and she just broke down those barriers, and she opened up doors for female artists and really for all artists, and just kind of led them into this place where we can have creative choice. And I think she puts that struggle and turmoil and all that truth onto her canvas, and you can see that there. You can see that humanity. It stares at you, and it's exposing her secrets for, I think, all of us to kind of witness. So just a really brave artist and a hero of her own story. And then she leaves behind this legacy that I believe really continues to inspire and captivate. I would not have made this film without my team. Svetlana Svetko is our co-producer, along with Neva Tassin, who's just been like my rock. And my husband is also a co-producer, Jennifer Wallace, and I have a creative producer, Amy Harrison. David Scott Smith edited, and Nikki Hauser also edited. And my associate producer I spoke with daily in Malaga, which were 9 hours apart. So you can just imagine Jorgen Lillyfelt Winstrom and Tasha Nesbitt. And then my son, he's worked so hard on this film and just editing and doing all, I mean, every hat you can imagine, this whole family. And without their support, this film would have never happened. And then, I am the president of Women in Film San Francisco. So having my board support this and even the members, it's been extraordinary. And they're in kind. People have really donated their time in kind because we couldn't get funding. So it's just, it's been really a brilliant, amazing experience.
Well, thanks for explaining a bit about who Tamara is. I must say I'm a huge fan of her work. And while you were explaining her, you talked a little bit about Art Deco, and there is a section of the film that covers Art Deco, and it's mentioned that Tamara recorded this time period in its own language. But for our guests who may not be, art enthusiasts and knowledgeable about Art Deco, I'm wondering if you could just explain in a really basic way what Art Deco is for anyone who may not be familiar with it.
Well, Art Deco is a style. It's visually, uh, it's like a visual art. It's architecture, it's design. It first appeared in France and just before World War One, and then it flourished internationally in the 20s and the 30s and in the 40s, and it just characterizes these rich colors and really bold geometry. It's got a lot of like delicate detail, but it's very avant-garde, and Tamar's art is quintessential example of that kind of style. It's distinguished by luxurious streamlines and aesthetics. But her art is so much more than just Art Deco. But you can see that it features those sharp uh, geometric shapes, with which that creates a sense of elegance and um, modern. Uh, and then she additionally, it's often, I guess, used with. and like kind of an intense, vibrant colors, and it's dynamic, it's dramatic. I think her paintings definitely have those elements. And I guess another hallmark of her style is very glossy finishes, and that applies to, she applied to the canvas, and kind of a sculpture quality. Th those elements combined, uh, her work, it really kind of stands out as very uniquely Art Deco. And she was known as the queen of Art Deco. And that, I think, in that era, she was very ahead of her time. And like I said before, this year marks the 100-year centennial of Art Deco, and there's been a notable resurgence in popularity. There was a recent article the other day in Vogue highlighting the revival, discussing what is currently in, and what is out in its design trends. And they pointed out that Art Deco is experiencing a significant comeback, which is quite interesting timing wise for tomorrow to be having these exhibitions, and then for the film to also be coming out. It's very serendipitous that way. Um, and I would argue that Art Deco never went out of style. For those that love it, the style's more than just a trend. It's a commitment to innovation and really a way of thinking outside the box. This chair doesn't have to just look like a chair. This building doesn't have to just look like, this boring building. And it just invites us to discover that there's more, just more than what we're traditionally taught to think and feel. And it challenges that, to redefine beauty in a functional way, um, but within our environments. And I think tomorrow's art definitely challenges us to think outside of what we're traditionally taught is acceptable.
Well, great. And anyone who would like to learn more about it should certainly watch your film. And they can, definitely see the examples depicted. So, how did you originally hear about Tamara's story, and how did you begin the process of making the film?
Oh gosh. Well, I was 21 years old, and I found myself standing in a hotel in Miami because there's several little boutique hotels there, and I kind of stumbled into one, had breakfast with a friend, and um, going through afterwards, there was this small kind of exhibition that had her work, obviously copies of her work. But as I walked through, I was just like, wow, I was captivated. It was, I don't know, just vibrant, sensual paintings. And I was like, who is this? And my friend, he said, yes, Tamara de Lempicka. And her art was so bold, and those colors and just those striking figures. It just really spoke to me in a way that was, deeply personal. I was like, wow. And I was told that day that Tamara's art was influenced by her relationships with both men and women. And that really struck a chord with me because I was like, what do you mean?" He said the word bisexual, and I was like, huh. And it was interesting because I had had girlfriends in the past, and I had even been in love with a woman before. And I, and then I'd had boyfriends too, but I didn't really understand that there was bisexuality, that existed, because I grew up in a really small town and I was told you're either gay or you're straight, and that there's no in between. So I think as I explored Tamara's life further, I discovered her bisexuality, because she was one of the first women to ever paint nudes, and she did have many relationships with the women that she was painting. And I just kind of, not kind of, I definitely recognized that same truth within myself. And it was just a moment of clarity, and acceptance. And I think it highlights the importance of representation, that whole, if you can see it, like what you see, I don't know, it's important. And it helped me to understand that love is love. And years later, I had just finished a screenplay years later, like gosh, probably 10 years later. I had written about the Impressionist painters, about Monet, Degas, Renoir, Morisot, Cassatt. And I had made a short film about Degas' painting of the rape. It's also known as The Interior. And a friend of mine had seen it, and he worked at this gallery in San Francisco at Union Square, huge, huge gallery. But that they were going, it was called the Weinstein Gallery, and they were going to have a small exhibition. And he asked, because he had seen the film, he said, would you like to meet the Lempicka family, because they're going to be here for this small exhibition of Tamara de Lempicka's work. And um, he said, they're looking for a woman to write a narrative screenplay, and they want to make a feature, and they want a woman to direct it. And I was like, no way, because at that point we only had 1% of women directing. And so I was like, they're looking for someone. Okay, I'm there. So I went, I met the family, and as I was talking to them, um, I just instantly, oh gosh, I was just thinking, like, before I arrived, I was so sick. Like, I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. Um, and I remember just walking in, and they were both just so calming and nice and down to earth and real. And that was over 20 years ago. And so it just set me on this journey of writing this narrative and diving deep into her life and working closely with the family, gathering all the insights and just research. And there were things coming up all the time. And, working with art historians and the collectors and fans and just years of research. So, my passion for directing the project just really grew stronger and stronger. But I just really found that, after spending about 15 years attempting to secure that financing, that for a narrative film about a life of a female um, woman artist, Jewish artist, bisexual artist, that I wasn't going to be getting any funding, especially in a period piece. It just wasn't happening. And so, just so many women, it's just a fact. We just don't get funding, obtain the funding compared to our male counterparts. So that experience highlighted just this persistent uh, disparity, that just on my heart. And then just also just within the whole film industry, I was like, oh God, this isn't going to happen. Um, but I kept trying, for 15 years I tried off and on. I even wrote another screenplay with her granddaughter, and she's so lovely, Victoria de Lempicka, and really dug in. And then during the pandemic, my team and I decided to just pivot. We're like, you know what, let's make a documentary. Amy Hurst was like, why don't you just make a documentary? And I was like, you know what, you're right. Why don't we? So I approached them, and they were open to it. And we're in lockdown, so I'm thinking, like, is it at the end of the world? Like, is this even matter? But I have to say I'm really grateful, because I was one of the lucky ones. I got to wake up every morning to Tamara de Lempicka's artwork. It's exciting. It's really stimulating, and as she would say, it vibrates you. You just like, whoa, what is this? And there's a story, within each painting for each year where she's at. So I was one of the lucky ones. I had something amazing to wake up to every day. That didn't mean it still didn't suck. I lost my mom and my best friend during that time, during making the film, and I dedicate the film to them. And I really felt like she taught me how her art, her story, because she went through so many horrific things. Losing both of her countries from war and having to be a refugee, having to escape fascism, losing husbands that had died, and friends and family members that had died in the Holocaust, and having to raise her daughter sometimes by herself, and be the breadwinner. She went through so many things, and so I looked at that and I kind of was like, you know what, this is a roadmap. This is a mirror for me to understand that people have come before us, and they've went through horrific things, and I'm going to be okay. and I just have to get up every day and put one foot in front of the other, and it's going to be okay. You know, we each get a turn being hit in the head with a 2x4. And it's nice to know that there are other people before us that have made it through. And their stories are important. Their stories show us how to navigate, you know? So I really am fortunate for that.
Well, Julie, listening to you talk, there's so many parallels with my experience. As you know, I directed a film about the female artist Kusama, and
Love it.
yeah. Oh, thank you. And I was also exposed to her work in my early 20s and spent n nearly 2 decades working to get a film about her.
Wow.
So I can relate to so much of what you're saying and the problems with funding and everything. I mean, I wish that some of the celebrities that collect this kind of work would put together a fund for women directors to make films about these people. You know, they have such amazing stories, but alas, no such fund exists, and it's just really such an uphill battle to get funding for these kinds of films. And I really also would love to give a shout out to the her family for standing by your side and not deciding to, dump you for some hotshot male director who maybe could get financing better because in the end you can just see how much, passion went into making this film, and it's just an absolute work of art. And so, I'm glad that you had that kind of support.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not always easy with the family because, I had to go to the family and say, you know what, we're not going to be doing a narrative anymore. So this isn't a team decision. This is one cook in the kitchen making the decision at the end of the day. Because with documentaries, you're not paying people to interview them. And so sometimes they're not going to say the things you like, and that the family would necessarily like.
Hmm.
But in the end, I was very fortunate to still have a great relationship with them, and fortunate that they really felt like Tamara would. I think it was Marissa said, I think she's watching from above and she's quite happy with the film. And that doesn't mean they were happy with everything in the film, the entire family. It just means that they felt like she would be, and that was important enough to them to give a nod, which was really, you know, um, it was great, you know.
Yeah, well, I think an audience really should appreciate what it is for a family to see a film made about someone they love, and
Yeah.
that yeah, that can be challenging, but it is just a beautiful film. So you did a
Thank
great job, and I'm wondering what's the most surprising thing you learned about Tamara during the making of the film?
Oh gosh, great question. Um, just really, that depth of her strategic thinking. It was astonishing. I don't know if you saw the 8 millimeter, but even how she dressed, when she was in Venice, she's got this big hat on with her grandchildren walking in Venice, just dressed impeccably. And that wasn't on accident. She was creating her own image. She was uh, creating this art, but crafting a brand. And uh, I think in a time when women are so overlooked, at that time, and now, and overlooked in the arts, um, our groundbreaking research, that we were able to unveil, um, that was unveiled to finding out that, her real name, Tamara Rose Horowitz, and that she had to convert from Judaism to Calvinism, and that her family, had to convert the children, and that she actually has a different birthday, and that she wasn't born June 16th, 1898, that she actually was born June 16th, 1894, with a completely different name. And that, those are revelations, I think, that were really profound and really helped understanding her life and her work and add layers to her and how she had to navigate such really choppy times, scary times, horrific times, having to navigate losing everything through 2 wars, knowing that she's Jewish, and, signing her name as a man, signing her name as a different person, becoming someone else in order to, not just get the deal, but in order to pass, in order to survive. Um, and I think that that was previously obscured. She was marginalized, and she was kind of like put up as this pinup girl and kind of over sexualized. These discoveries, I think, clarify that Tamara was not just a liar, but that she was strategically navigating her identity, to protect herself and her family during really horrific times. And that insight, I think, reframes her actions not as deceit and, she's such a liar. She's so vain. She said that, she was young. She pretended she was younger because of the vanity. She was so vain, but really that she was trying to survive, and casting her in a light that I think shows her resilience and her adaptability in face of real danger. I think that that is profound, to show that this woman had the ability to navigate all of that, and also put both of her, put her child through school, and then her daughter Kizette's children, and help pay for their lives. That she was an artist that actually she had I don't want to say she just made a living. She actually was doing fantastically well financially. Um, and most artists don't ever get to experience that while they're alive. And she, especially as a woman, and she wasn't married to a man that was a great artist and got a leg up like so many other female artists have had in the past, not to diminish them. Um, because it's a small circle, and of course, there's love in that circle, but she didn't have that. So she was navigating her branding, her her business, um, and her survival all at the same time. And that's, really remarkable. And knowing when to leave. She read 6 different papers, she spoke several different languages. She knew what was happening with Hitler. She understood that what she had went through, losing everything in the Russian Revolution, was happening again. And so she was able to get out and get her husband out, that was Jewish and openly Jewish, and sell things slowly so that she could get out. She was fleeing, but she did it in a very quiet and strategic way. And that's unfortunately happening again. We have a lot of things in history that are repeating itself. So um, she was smart enough to understand that history repeats itself and get out when she needed to.
It's interesting to hear you talk about how she, carried herself as a female artist, and there's so many parallels with other early artists like Frida Kahlo and even Kusama, that not only did they make amazing work, but they carry themselves in a way that, if they walked into a room, they just had this magnetic appeal. You can really see that with her. And
Yeah.
um, I'm wondering, you mentioned, unlike a lot of women artists, Tamara was successful during her lifetime. And one of the things she purchased with her earnings was actually jewelry. But there were reasons for this that had nothing to do with vanity. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Um, well, as there were horrible things going on with the persecution of the Jews, and she knew what was coming with Hitler. She knew after dealing with the Russian Revolution that when things shift like that and they're coming for you, You know, maybe at first they're coming for your neighbor, or they're coming for someone down the street, but when they finally are coming for you, you're not going to know it necessarily. And so she knew this, and she knew that the jewelry, each bracelet was a way um, of making sure that she could flee at any moment, at any time, and that she would have that security. And they would sew them into the clothes so that um, they would be able to financially, take care of themselves. And so, she used to tell Marissa tells a story of how she was in Cuernavaca with her great grandmother, and she tells her a story of how, she wanted nice things again, and she would paint, and she would paint, and she would paint, and she would sell her paintings until she would have nice things again. And she would buy herself a bracelet, she told Marissa. And she said, and I told myself that I wouldn't stop until I had bracelets from here to here. And that was on her wrist, this huge amount. And there are pictures where she has all of these bracelets. And, someone could look at that and think she's superficial, but really it was a survival mechanism. And I look at the bangles and the bracelets of women throughout the world, and I think of them in a very different way now.
If you could time travel and have coffee with Tamara, do you have an outstanding question you would love to ask her?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh, that one was really hard for me. Well, I mean, there's so many things I'd like to know. I think um, if if I think I would like to know what she feels about the climate right now. What's happening? How history does seem to be repeating itself again. That to me is something that I would like to know what she thinks about, because um, she lived through all of this once, and we're living through some really choppy waters right now. And so I think that she would be able to, you know, I don't know, just have a sense of what to do, what not to do, kind of thing. But I also think I'd like to ask her um, what she thinks of the film. Is she okay with it? It's her art up there for the world to see. Many of her drawings and photographs and things that people had never seen before. So yeah, I get the impression that, this is a place where she gets to um, see her work, completely laid out for the whole world to see. And how does she feel about seeing it all there? Because what a life, you're judged just on your 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 kind of prime moment in your life, not the beginning art, not the end art, which is just so sad because we have a whole life that we live. We have so much ageism, so I'd like to ask her about how, she feels about getting to see her art celebrated in one place.
Well, it would certainly be fun to have that opportunity to meet with her. The art in the film is just so incredible, and at times you added animation to it, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process.
Oh, the animation. So Tamar's art, it was uh it's so bright, and it's so bold, but we had to be really careful because I didn't want it to look cheesy. You're messing with a masterpiece, and you're adding movement, and you're taking these static images, and that are not lacking in any way, and you're trying to make them um, more. So it was definitely carefully maintained, and I wanted there to, be an integrity of the original work while just adding a dynamic, just kind of visual element that's just slight. So a slight movement of the hair, a slight movement of the arm or the dress. So it wasn't it wasn't over the top by any means, and I think that she would have been okay with it, and I think that the family was okay with it. I think other people I've talked to, they were okay with it. We just didn't want it to come across um, as cheesy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of movement and life and so forth. So, but of course, everyone has their own opinions about these things. I'm also wondering, do you have a favorite painting by Tamara? And if so, which one is it?
Oh gosh. I guess a portrait of Ira Perot. It's Ira was Tamara's best friend, but she was also her love of her life. It was her lover, her love, and their relationship was deeply um, significant. And the more I dug into that, the more I found out that she was a constant source of inspiration. Tamara painted her over 10 times and drew her. And that painting is particularly special. Also, um, it captures Ira's physical appearance in a way that a lot of her paintings, you can see in the eyes, they're kind of dead, as Eden Espinosa and I were talking about recently when we were in New York, when we opened up at Lincoln Center there and had our New York premiere. We were talking about how dead the eyes are, but when you look into Ira's eyes, there's this physical appearance there that's just like so alive, so soulful, so depthful, and just really encapsulates that emotion, and that intimacy, and that connection that they shared. And it's just so vibrant. It's like really intimate and and apparent, that this woman meant a lot to her and that there was a lot of passion there in several of her paintings of Ira. And I was really, like I said, I worked with Barbara Streisand on her section of the film, and she lent me her high resolutions, and she used to own Ira Perot. And so that also was really important to me that visually, that we represented that properly and made sure that, and important to Barbara, that we had that high resolution, that integrity there. Um, and uh, I think, that adds a historical allure to that particular painting. But I also have a personal connection to that piece because I have a drawing of Ira that is ink and gouache on paper that I won the auction at Christie's in Paris, uh, not this last November, but the November before. And it holds just like this amazing place now in my heart. It's a drawing of her, of Ira, and it's called Ira. And it says Ira, Ira on one side, and the other side says Ira backwards. Um, and it, Tamara's favorite jewelry was pearls, and she's wearing pearls, and she's holding a a lily, and she she looks kind of sad. And they were separated by the war, and Tamara would go back and still had her studio there and still see her. But they were separated, and Tamara was living in the States when she left. She had moved to Beverly Hills and then later to New York for 15 years and then to Houston and, Cuernavaca, Mexico. So they were separated, but she would go back and see her. But in this particular painting, you can see she's smiling, but she looks sad. And so we've loaned that to the exhibition, and it was in San Francisco, and it was part of the Era section that they made. They made an Era section after watching our film. Um, they would have had an Era section anyways, but they kind of understood, I think, the romantic and depthful relationship a little bit more from the film. And all the research and all the interviews that we did where people really help give us those connections. So that's the long answer. Sorry, it's so long, but I really
No, no,
do
that's fine.
care about that.
Yeah, it's great to hear about your favorite. My favorite is the self-portrait in the green car. I just love that one. It's just great. And your
Oh yeah.
photograph. of that. Yeah. So,
Tamara in a green Bugatti. And in that is our poster. So that and actually so is Ira. So those are our two posters. So you got a good eye. Um,
yeah.
you've done this before, I see. That also the eras are all traveling, that exhibition's traveling to Houston too. So people in Houston will be able to see that exhibition of Tamara's work soon.
Can you please talk a bit about how much Tamara's work currently sells for and how much art by the top female artists sell for in general versus the top art by men?
Ah, great question. Tamara's work has it's fetched millions at auctions, and it's that really, underscores the status, of her as the third most valuable female artist, just behind Frida Kahlo and George O'Keeffe. And despite, that recognition, uh, there's a significant gender gap that still remains in the art market. So Roland Weinstein in our film, he's a collector, and was interviewed, and also owns a Tamara de Lempicka. He discusses this at length. For instance, her painting of Marjorie Ferry, it sold for $21 million. And so that's, how she got the ranking of the third most valuable. Actually, at that point, she was the second most valuable. But then Frida had a painting that sold. So, showcasing that high demand, for her work. Wow, wow, this is really significant, right? Really puts her up there. But the prices commanded by top male artists are typically much higher. And I'm talking millions and millions of dollars higher. And it's a stark disparity when you're comparing the market value. So you might need to review, let's say, hundreds, even, like I said, thousands of male artists, before you actually get to the top female artists that are auctioning for significantly less. Which actually, if you think about it, when and if female artists become popular, you're going to actually probably get yourself a steal there if you were to invest in female art. Uh, but so Tamara was exceptional in that she archived this. I mean, sorry, that she achieved, this level of success, and that's really great. And she also, Roland talks about in the film that she wasn't married to a very famous male artist, which so many women have been. And that doesn't take away from them. It's a small community of people, but um, just the fact that she stood on her own, she had to stand alone in making, and she wasn't she struggled throughout her life, but she actually had wealth as an artist during her life. That's shocking, and really was the breadwinner in her family. So, Annie Patty is in the film, and I interview her. She talks about the fact that, there's this new auction that's going to be happening at Christie's, and her and I were talking about this that's actually happening in real life. This Dr. Bacard painting, it's really an iconic painting. And he was one of Tomorrow's biggest collectors. And this auction is coming up on March 5th. And it's going to be really interesting to see how much this painting goes for. And we both predict that it will go for over 20 million, maybe 25 million. The market is, starting to acknowledge just beginnings to recognize female artists more equitably. Um, but there's still a long way to go, So we're millions of dollars apart when it comes to equity.
Well, thank you for explaining that. And earlier you talked a little bit about the challenges of, with regards to your attempt to fund a narrative film about the artist and that you changed to making a documentary. But funding a documentary at this level is also not easy. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you funded the film.
Wow, yeah, securing funding for female filmmakers, that is just statistically, it's so significantly less, anywhere from like 96 to 98% of all funding goes to men. So it's was definitely the most horrific challenge. Like it really it was mind-bending. You're just sitting there going, "Are you kidding me?" I applied to probably over 30 to 50 grants, and we received none, which initially seemed like a huge barrier and made me feel like we couldn't do this, you know. But I found just innovative ways to gather the necessary resources. So, during the pandemic, we had like a Zoom fundraiser where we had Eden Espinoza and we had my friend from The Voice, who's Paul Merkovich, come perform. And we did an auction and auctioned off a couple posters and books, and that helped. And then, I had this unbelievable lucky day where Barbara Streisand's right-hand person answered the phone, and she agreed. She was busy writing her book, but she agreed to lend her high-resolution collection of Lempicka's work that she owned. And so that was incredible to have her. She's so significant in the film world with producing, directing, and every world, and for her to, provide us with that rare access. And then she also participated in the editing process for her section for over 8 months. She just really made sure that the depth and the accuracy of her section of the film, and really enhanced it, the quality, and she just made it more significant and really taught me a lot and made me feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing with this film. And then Angelica Houston lent her voice and her personal stories of wearing Tamara's jewelry to the Oscars because she had acted and was played Tamara in the longest running play in Los Angeles, and she played Tamara de Lempicka. So Jack Nicholson was with her at the time, and he had given her this jewelry that she ended up wearing to the Oscars, and she lent her voice, and allowed us her narrative into the film. So those are multi-millions of dollars worth of time and contribution. But then I had Chris Martin, he did all of our coloring for free. He's an amazing colorist. And just I told you, my family, my husband's my co-producer, my son, but such a powerhouse of women. I mentioned everybody's names earlier. And, working with like Jorgen Liliefeld Lindstrom on a daily basis in Malaga, that was crazy. 9 hours ahead, and we're just making it work. So, so much in kind, and that came out to millions of dollars in kind. I would say probably 5 million. We're probably going on six when it comes to distribution, when it comes to like us, you know, touring this film around. And so that community backing. And then I couldn't have done it without Women in Film. I'm the president of Women in Film San Francisco. So having the Bay Area and having these women support this project and come out and support me and support the project and support independent film was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And just my board is amazing. Could not be doing this without my board.
Yeah, these grants, I think a lot of people don't understand how challenging it is to get them, and
Mm.
they're so competitive. But on top of that, a lot of the top organizations who fund documentary film, they don't even allow you to submit applications for biographical films. And it's really unfortunate because I feel like they're contributing to having these trailblazers, written out of history because you can't get the funding to tell the stories. So it's a really unfortunate thing. But in any event, could you talk a little bit about the process of getting the film out into the world? I mean, anyone working in the film industry right now knows, in the indie film space that the distribution landscape is just rapidly changing. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, getting this film out to audiences has been intense. It's been rewarding, but it's been intense. it took about 4.5 years to make, as I said, and with no grants, it's just like you're what, funding is just like not there, and you're just sitting there going, oh my God, so how are we going to do distribution? And my co-producer is my husband and Blake Wellen, and he just has played such a crucial role in these efforts, and like just on a daily basis, reaching out to different uh, organizations, film festivals, embassies, museums, and really booking us. So we've been booked into, we opened up, we premiered at Mill Valley, and we sold out there. We played at the Roxy, six screenings in San Francisco. That was amazing. Mostly sold out, so that's crazy. And then the De Young Museum included us in the exhibition of Tamara de Lempicka's very first retrospective, and our film was sold out there. So that was just, it's all incredible. Just recently, we spoke at the Art Deco Society in New York, and then we premiered in New York at the Lincoln Center. So that was extraordinary, for the New York Jewish Film Festival and the New York Museum put that on. And that felt incredible. Two screenings all sold out. And then in between, just walking around Lincoln Center going, oh my God, I'm here. That was probably just one of the best moments of my whole life. And then we just played San Diego. We're playing Maine coming up in March, and Aspen Film Festival is having a screening on March 4th at 5 o'clock. And Marissa and I will be there, and we're going to do a Q&A. And then the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston will be there. That's March 15th, and the film will be there for April 5th as well. And then there's a small theater where Tamar used to go in Houston called the River Oaks. It's going to play there, pre-theatrical there. And then we're premiering in at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And then the Washington, D.C., we're going to be playing in the Polish Embassy there at the J&J Festival. That's in May. And then the Baker Museum, we're going to be playing there as well as the Jewish Film Festival there. And then Krakow, Poland, which is extraordinary because she is kind of the queen of Poland. So that's amazing. And then Estonia is doing the Fashion Film Festival. And then Tel Aviv LGBTQ, which is really important to us that the LGBTQ community sees this film, and that's in Israel. Um, and then Paris. So we're going to a shaded view on fashion and film in France. So that's going to be in November, and then 10 cities in Australia. So that's just the beginning. We have so many other people we're talking to, museums and embassies and schools, and the whole industry is really kind of cracked apart. And we've had the fires, we had the strikes, we've had so much against us. Now we have AI. The industry's changed and distribution has changed, and self-distribution isn't such a dirty word anymore. We are in talks with major distribution companies, but we want to make sure we get a really good deal because we don't want this film just put up on a shelf. And the more people that see it, and the more that we tour it, and the more that we're actually there representing it, we really feel that people will be able to, request this film, and that we'll be able to make sure that this film gets proper distribution. My last film sold to HBO, so I'd really like to do something with them, but I'm open. Netflix isn't such a bad place. It's a great place. So, really open to going and screening this film all these different places and seeing what ends up happening. But if we have to do self-distribution, we'll do that as well. The world wants this film. It's definitely Tamara de Lempicka's time.
Well, I applaud you for all the hard work you're putting into getting the film out there. And while we're on this topic, since you'll be adding new, dates and screenings and so forth, could you go ahead and please share with us your website, the social media handles that are relevant to this film, and your personal website also, and social handles if you'd like to share them?
Yes, of course, that's so important. So for those that are interested in staying updated, um, our website is www.tamara.doc. So it's Tamara doc. And then our Instagram is Tamara de Lempicka doc, DOC. So Tamara de Lempicka doc. And then we also have a Facebook. My personal Facebook's Julie Colleen Rubio. And then we have the gallery that Jorgen is the founder of, and that we have is our Facebook. So it's the Tamara de Lempicka Gallery. We have 52,000 followers there. We have 12,000 on Instagram. So I answer questions. I'm constantly on there DMing. So if you have any questions there, and then if you go to our website, the Tamara Doc, you will find in our announcements that we announce, constantly updating our screenings and making sure that that way people know where we're playing next.
Great. And I wanted to ask you too, how did you get into filmmaking in the first place?
Oh, wow. So, I was born in Los Angeles. So, and I went to acting school there. And then I went to Lee Strasberg in London and in New York for producing and directing. And I just was drawn, to acting, but also eventually, the producing, the directing, being behind the camera. And then I'd written my whole life. So producing my own projects was really, um, I felt like was something that, was underrepresented with women, so I have a funny story. The first time I was ever directing, I was supposed to just be producing a short film called Impression because I've been writing this piece for 6 years about the Impressionist painters, and I had realized no one was giving me $20 million as a first female director when there's only 1% of women directing at the time. So I decided I'll just do the short myself. So it was about Degas' painting of the rape, and it was also been called The Interior. So I had hired a female producer, and also I was producing on it, and then she was also going to direct. And so there was like, I don't know, about 4 hours of her and this actor on set that was playing Degas fighting, and we hadn't even got a first shot off yet. And, this is a narrative. So I'm sitting there going, oh my God, we only have this location for 24 hours and we've already lost 4 hours of this. And everyone's tired, and there's just, what are we going to do? And next thing I know, she quits. She walks out. She's like, I'm leaving. And I walked out there. I begged her. I was like, don't do this. I said, I'm a woman. You're a woman. Let's not do this. Like, we have to support each other here. And she said, I can't deal with him. I'm leaving. And so she just left, and I just said, okay. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning at that time, and I was like, okay, I have an entire set of 15 actors, 25 extras, it's three, I gotta go. And I literally pulled up a album box, and I had done my homework. I had completed my producing and my directing in school, but here I am, this is a real deal. And so said, action, let's go. And I got that in the can. And I was very pleased with how it looked for my first film. And it went to film festivals. And, I just really, I wasn't going to walk away from that challenge. And, I really felt at that time it sucked that, a male actor felt like he could do that to a female director. Uh, and now I wouldn't have put up with that for a moment. But it did turn out that one of the reasons why she walked out that day was because she had breast cancer. And she decided that was more important in the healing process than having to deal with this schmuck on set. So I really understood where she came from, but she really saved my life because she gave me that gift of feeling like, I could do it. And I didn't have time to think, oh, I'm an imposter. I just went. And from that point on, I've always written and directed and produced, and obviously could not do this without my team. I've mentioned that before, but honestly, my team's amazing, and you can't do the filmmaking without the band. The band doesn't play alone. You're not the only person in the band. And so it's amazing to work with such qualified, amazing women. And then, if you're in my family, you're having to make film. You have no choice. Even though my son works for Meta also, but he and owns his own side company, he gets forced into all my stuff all the time and helping me. So I'm really lucky that I have such a a powerful team.
Wow, that's quite a story of your directorial debut. I enjoyed hearing that. So you're the president of Women in Film up in San Francisco, and I'm wondering how do you juggle that with your own filmmaking career, which, also I would add includes your own life and being a mother. So that's a lot to juggle. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Some days I'm like, what am I doing? How am I doing that? I couldn't do it without my board. I have such a great board of directors who handle so much and take on so much that it just feels like I can maintain a balance, because they're so amazing. I think it's challenging having a actual film career that's, doing something right this second. It's it feels very scary some days, but it's, I think, all about time management and prioritizing the projects and then just kind of aligning that with my values, like I used to put my head down and not come up for air because I can hyper focus. I'm dyslexic. Um, and I really feel, and I have this, one of my superpowers is like I am able to hyper focus. But one of the things I realized was I don't have to just do the work. I have to do the people. Like I have to connect to the people. I have to love my family. I have to love my friends. And I'm not always so balanced with that. So I pull myself out a lot. And if I have a rule, like if a person comes in and they want a question, like my son or my husband, like everything else goes off. And it's like, what do you need? And they get full attention because um, you have to pick people over this thing. And this thing is magic. This thing is powerful. This thing is the most powerful medium we have in the world. And it can start wars and it can end wars. And it's a huge responsibility, what you produce and what you put out to the world. And so, it pulls you in, it sucks you in, it eats you, and you're like gone. If it's a calling for you, you're in. And I don't think uh, that's always a good thing. Sometimes I think you have to balance it. You have to pull out. You have to be there with your family and ground so that you can give again, you know?
And that's great advice. I'm also wondering what advice would you give to first-time filmmakers?
Oh gosh, I think we were talking about this before. Um, I just would say don't do it. No kidding. Although I've talked to quite a few people that say that. I don't know. I think when you're embarking on this career, it's really not for the faint of heart. It's perhaps one of the most challenging and, rewarding paths one can take. One can choose 'cause it's a choice. But don't romanticize this industry. It's tough, especially as a woman still. And it's getting worse. And it's unforgiving and it's a big challenge. So I would hope, even post Me Too, that things get better, but the business side of this, it just remains gritty and imbalanced and lack of equity. Uh, and it's just you don't get the same funding, you don't get the same pay. It's stark. But if it's a calling, and you really feel that, don't give up your day job, but if it's a calling, then you got to do it, right? So because you can, uh, you can, if you can't imagine doing anything else, then okay, fine. Just go ahead and do it and then pursue it with your heart. But then I would definitely say, don't like shy away and be like, oh, I have to have everything perfect. Like just go be messy, go be dirty, go take your phone, make a film, and experiment, see what works, learn AI, explore with using AI and all of the technology advancements and that are at your disposal, but learn AI. It's the most important thing right now. It's not going away. And I know that there's a lot of controversy, and I agree with a lot of things that you're thinking right now about AI, but it's not going away. And, you know, somebody the other day asked me if I would get off of a particular social media that we've built like a really big um, following. And I said no, because we're one of the good ones at the table. So, we can't just go away. And AI, if you don't learn it, you will go away. It is like electricity has landed. And you are saying, I don't want to use electricity. Well, I'm sorry, you're going to use electricity. It's going to run you over. So get ready. And so make sure you're learning that because you will become a dinosaur very, very fast if you do not jump in. And, just don't expect this to be easy. It's not going to be an easy path. And the industry is so imperfect. It's unbalanced, but it's also full of really great opportunities that allow you to make something meaningful. So just learn as much as you possibly can. Just learn, 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 learn. And you be the change. Just hire qualified women, write powerful stories for women, put them in your scripts, and just make change happen and know that you can and just go after that passion.
Well, that's excellent advice as well. So thank you for that. And I always hesitate to ask filmmakers about their next projects, knowing that it's a full-time job to distribute a film. But if you are working on anything new that you would like to share with our audience, of course, we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, my mind's always running forward too. Like, what am I going to do next? And I've written quite a few screenplays that are sitting on my desk. One's Impression. It took 6 years to write. I have another one called Mass Truth. And then I have this one called One. And it's based on this real situation at Harvard that completely blew my mind years ago. At Harvard, 50% of your grade depends on your class participation. And if you don't speak up, if you're raising your hand, you're not speaking up, then you're not going to get the same credit. But something strange was happening. They were realizing that in the graduate program that women weren't graduating with the same honors as men as when they first came in. So they did it like an experiment. They put monitors into the classrooms, and this really happened. So they observed that and found that women weren't being called on as often when they were raising their hands. And the professors, male and female, and the students, they weren't remembering what they said. Um, so that's even worse, right? Like, okay, finally you're chosen, and male and female students and teachers don't recall what you've said and what your contributions are. So um, they were able to eradicate that. And that was pretty amazing. And so when I looked at that, I just kind of was like, wait a minute, that means, imagine you're a little girl, you're raising your hand in class and no one really is hearing you. And imagine happening that your whole life, that when you finally get to an institution like Harvard, that this is continuing to happen. It's gonna make you realize that you live in a world that's kind of shrinking you down. Um, and it's beyond a subtle bias. But so I figure, here's the hopeful part of the film. It's like, so it's about this Latina that lives up in Harvard, and I mean, lives in Napa, and she gets into Harvard from really hard work, and she learns about this issue, and she becomes part of solving the issue and helping change it, like they really did at Harvard. And they found that just by making people aware of the biases, and she realizes that there's this power in awareness, and that people don't necessarily they're not all bad. They want to be better. They want to know that they're doing this to one another, and that women can do this to each other, even more sometimes than men can. So that we're kind of holding each other down. So if we're only listening, to half of the voices in the room, we're only getting half the answers. And I don't know about you, but I think, we need all the answers. Like, how are we going to solve some of the major issues that we have today? How are we going to cure cancer if we're only listening to half of the answers? So this film's just about, it's not just about like Harvard classroom. It's about how we all have these blind spots, and how once we see them, we can actually do something about them. And I know we're like eradicating DEI, and we're saying like let's it's all fair, let's not focus on this anymore. But statistically, we're 51% women in the room. We're 51% now. And so, hey, if you don't want to do it because it's fair, you don't want to do DEI because, oh, that's fair. And that's, that's diversity, so fine. You don't want to do that. Fine. You live in a capitalistic country, maybe you want to make more money. So as sad as that may sound, you're going to make more money if you listen to 51% of the voices in the room. And guess what? Your garden is going to be better if it's diverse. That's just nature. That's just common sense. That's just reality. And so if you can't do it because it's fair, do it because you want to make more money. And since we live in this capitalistic country, that's kind of my solution to this issue is start listening to everybody in your room, especially if you own a company. And make sure if you're on a set that you're hiring, and you're not just putting men as extras in your background. You're putting women as your extras in your background, and that you're not just writing, these stories of keeping women down. So it's a positive, fun story that takes place in Napa and then moves to Harvard and it comes back to Napa. There's a little love story in the middle, but we'll see what happens with that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think that's a great place to wrap up today. But thank you so much, Julie, for taking time out of your schedule to, share all of this great information with our audience. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both so much. And Heather, I just absolutely love your film. Everyone needs to go and see it. It's an important film, and you're an important person, and what you're doing really matters. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and from my team for listening to us, because not everybody listens to independent film, and we've been really fortunate. So thanks so much.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yes, thank you, the audience.
Now, in its second edition, Carol Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carol Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Raiklin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidraiklin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carol and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.